HOA complained my grill was too flashy, so I turned it into a volcanic pit that roars on ignition. The sun hung low over the manicured lawns of Caronwood Estates, casting golden streaks across the cul-de-sacs where every house looked like it had been plucked from a catalog. Perfectly trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, and pastel siding screamed conformity. But my house. Oh, my house was the black sheep of the block, and I was its proud shepherd. My name's Jack Delaney, and I'd spent the last 6 months turning my backyard into a shrine of Rebelliona chrome-plated, flame-spitting grill as the centerpiece. It wasn't just a grill, it was a statement. A middle finger to the Caronwood Homeowners Association and their endless rulebook. The trouble started when Karen Phelps, the HOA president with a perm as tight as her grip on the neighborhood, sent me a letter. Your grill's aesthetics are disruptive to the community's harmony, it read, her cursive signature practically dripping with sanctimony. Too flashy? My grill was a work of art, polished steel, LED underglow, and a custom flame jet that could singe the eyebrows off a bald eagle. I'd named her Betsy, and she was my pride and joy. Every Saturday, I'd fire her up, the roar of the flames drowning out the hum of lawnmowers, and the neighbors would peek over their fences, torn between awe and irritation. I could have ignored the letter. Most would have. But I'm not most people. I'm the guy who once painted his mailbox neon green just because the HOA said earth tones only. So, when Karen's note arrived, I didn't just get mad, he got creative. If they thought Betsy was too flashy, I'd give them something to really complain about. I'd turn her into a volcanic pit, a beast that roared on ignition, a spectacle that'd make their precious harmony look like a funeral dirge. I called up my buddy Marcus, a welder with a penchant for chaos and a laugh that could shake walls. Jack, you're insane, he said, grinning as I sketched my vision on a napkin at Rusty's Diner. You want a grill that shoots flames 10 feet high and sounds like a dragon waking up? Exactly, I said, sipping my coffee. And I wanted to glow red. Like lava. Karen's gonna lose her mind. Marcus leaned back, stroking his beard. You know she'll call the cops. Or worse, her lawyer. Let her, I said. This is war. The next 2 weeks were a blur of sparks and sweat. My garage became a mad scientist's lab, arc welders screaming, metal clanging, and Metallica blaring from my old boombox. Marcus brought in scrap from his shop, and I sourced a surplus propane tank from a shady guy on Craigslist. We rigged Betsy with new burners, a reinforced frame, and a custom ignition system that'd make a rocket engineer jealous. The piece de resistance? A sound module that triggered a bone-rattling roar every time the flames kicked on, synced to a glow of red LEDs that pulsed like the heart of a volcano. The night before the big reveal, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, imagining Karen's face, her pinched lips, her eyes bugging out like a cartoon villain's. But there was something else gnawing at me, a whisper of doubt. Was I going too far? I shoved it down. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every guy who'd ever been told his lawn was half an inch too long or his Christmas lights were too bright. This was for freedom. Saturday dawned bright and brutal, the kind of summer day that made your shirt stick to your back by 9 a.m. The neighborhood was buzzing, kids on bikes, sprinklers hissing, and the faint hum of Karen's minions patrolling with their clipboards. I invited a few neighbors over for a barbecue, keeping it vague. By noon, my backyard was packed. Marcus, my neighbor Dave with his beer gut and Hawaiian shirt, and a few others brave enough to defy the HOA's unwritten code of silence. Ready for the show? I asked, tossing Marcus a beer. He winked. Let's burn this place down. Metaphorically, of course. I strode to Betsy, now a hulking monument of steel and menace. The crowd hushed. Karen was there, too, standing at the edge of my yard with her arms crossed, her floral sundress practically screaming, I'm calling the board. I gave her a nod, the kind you give a bull before you wave the red flag. Welcome, everyone. I called out. The HOA says my grill's too flashy. So I made a few upgrades. I hit the ignition. The roar was deafening, a primal bellow that shook the ground. Flames erupted, licking the sky, as the LEDs bathed the yard in a hellish red glow. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Dave hooped, spilling his beer. Marcus pumped his fist. Even the kids stopped chasing each other to stare, wide-eyed, at the beast I'd unleashed. Betsy wasn't just a grill anymore, she was a god. Karen's face was everything I'd hoped for. Her jaw dropped, her clipboard trembling in her hands. "This is unacceptable," she shrieked, storming toward me. "You're violating at least 6 bylaws. I'll have this monstrosity dismantled by Monday." "Go ahead and try," I shot back, grinning. "Betsy's street legal." I checked. She sputtered, her face turning the color of her prized azaleas. "You think this is funny? You're making a mockery of our community." "Lady, I'm making dinner," I said, tossing a steak onto the grill. The flames hissed, and the crowd laughed. For a moment, I felt invincible. But then came the twist I didn't see coming. From the back of the crowd, a figure emerged, an old man, hunched and weathered, leaning on a cane. I'd seen him before, always tending his roses across the street, but we'd never spoken. His name was Mr. Hargrove, and he was the kind of guy who seemed to exist outside the HOA's radar. Quiet, unassuming, the opposite of me. He shuffled forward, his eyes locked on Betsy, and the crowd parted like he was Moses. "Jack," he said, his voice raspy but firm. "Can I talk to you?" The air shifted. Karen smirked, probably thinking she'd found an ally. I nodded, wary. "Sure, Mr. Hargrove. What's up?" He didn't look at the grill. He looked at me, his eyes cloudy but sharp. "That thing, it's loud. Real loud. Reminds me of something." He paused, gripping his cane. "You know I was in Vietnam?" I blinked. "No, sir. I didn't." "Flamethrowers," he said softly. "They sounded like that. Roared just like your grill. Every time I hear it, I'm back in the jungle. Heart racing, waiting for the screams." The backyard went silent. Even Karen shut up. My stomach twisted. I'd spent weeks building a weapon to fight a petty war, and now this old man was standing here, tearing it apart with a few quiet words. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth was dry. "I'm not saying you can't have your fun," Hargrove continued. "Just maybe think about what it means to some of us. What it brings back." He turned and shuffled away, leaving me standing there like an idiot. The crowd dispersed awkwardly. Karen didn't gloat, she just left, her clipboard clutched like a shield. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, but even he looked shaken. "You okay, man?" he asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just didn't expect that." That night, I sat in my garage, staring at Betsy. The red LEDs glowed faintly, like embers. I'd won the battle, hadn't I? Karen was humiliated, the neighborhood was talking, and Betsy was a legend. But Hargrove's words clung to me like smoke. I thought about his eyes, the way they'd carried a weight I couldn't imagine. My war with the HOA was a game. His war had been real. I didn't sleep much that night either. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to dismantle Betsy, she was still my masterpiece, but I wasn't going to fire her up again, either. Not like that. I started sketching plans to tone her down, maybe swap the roar for something softer, the flames for something less apocalyptic. I'd keep the spirit, but I'd make it right. The next week, I invited Hargrove over. He didn't say much, just nodded when I showed him the new setup, a quieter ignition, a subtler glow. "Looks good, Jack," he said, and for the first time, I saw him smile. It wasn't much, but it felt like a truce. Karen, of course, wasn't done. She sent another letter, this time about my unauthorized modifications. I laughed, but it was hollow. The fight didn't feel as fun anymore. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way Hargrove's roses bloomed brighter than anyone else's, the way Dave always brought an extra beer for me, the way the kids looked at Betsy like it was magic. Maybe Karenwood wasn't just a battlefield. Maybe it was a community, and I'd been too busy swinging to see it. The weeks after Mr. Hargrove's quiet bombshell were strange. I'd always seen Karenwood Estates as a prison of picket fences, with Karen Phelps as the warden. But now, cracks were forming in that worldview. I started noticing the small things, the way Mrs. Carter next door left cookies on my porch when I worked late, or how the kids would wave at me while riding their bikes, shouting, "Light up Betsy, Jack." I'd been so consumed with sticking it to the HOA that I hadn't seen the people behind the rules. Still, I wasn't ready to wave a white flag. Not yet. Karen's next letter arrived like clockwork, citing unapproved structural modifications to my grill. She'd attached a grainy photo of Betsy, snapped from her backyard, no doubt while perched on a ladder like some suburban spy. I could have fought it. Betsy was still within code, thanks to my obsessive research, but the fire in me was flickering. Hargrove's words kept echoing, waiting for the screams. I couldn't unhear it. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a truce. I knocked on Karen's door one evening, holding a six-pack of craft beer as a peace offering. She opened it, her eyes narrowing like I was there to sell her a timeshare. "What do you want, Jack?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "To talk," I said, holding up the beer. "No lawyers, no clipboards. Just you and me." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her living room was exactly what I'd expected. Floral curtains, a cross-stitched "Bless this home" on the wall, and a coffee table stacked with HOA binders. We sat, and I popped open 2 beers, sliding one her way. She didn't touch it. "Look," I started, "I know you hate Betsy. And yeah, I went overboard. But I'm not the enemy here. I just want my yard to feel like mine." Karen's lips pursed. "This isn't about your yard, Jack. It's about rules. We have them for a reason. People move here for stability, not whatever that volcano thing is." I leaned back, sipping my beer. "Stability's great, but it's suffocating. You ever think maybe people want a little chaos? A little life?" She scoffed. "Life? You call terrifying the neighborhood with flames and noise life." That stung, but I didn't bite back. Instead, I thought of Hargrove. "Did you know Mr. Hargrove was in Vietnam?" I asked. "My grillet brings stuff back for him. Bad stuff. I didn't know that when I built it." Karen blinked, her armor cracking just a bit. "I didn't know that either." "Yeah," I said. "I'm toning Betsy down. Keeping the spirit, but, less dragon. Maybe we can find a middle ground." For the first time, Karen didn't snap back. She looked at her beer, then took a tentative sip. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "But no more stunts." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and defeat. "Deal." The next weekend, I threw another barbecue, but this time it was different. Betsy's roar was muted to a low growl, the flames tamed to a warm flicker. I invited everyone: Dave, Marcus, the kids, even Hargrove. Karen didn't show, but I hadn't expected her to. The mood was lighter, less like a rebellion and more like a party. Hargrove brought a tray of his famous ribs, and when I fired up Betsy, he didn't flinch. He just watched the flames, his face unreadable, then gave me a nod. It felt like absolution. But peace, it turns out, is fragile. A week later, I got a call from Marcus. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, his voice tight. "Karen's pushing for a new bylaw. Total ban on non-standard grills. She's got half the board on her side." I gripped the phone, my blood heating up. She said she'd think about a middle ground. "Yeah, well," she lied, Marcus said. "Meeting's tomorrow night. You coming?" I didn't want to. I was tired of the letters, the glares, the endless tug of war. But I thought of Betsy, of Hargrove, of the kids who'd drawn pictures of my grill with crayons and left them in my mailbox. This wasn't just about me anymore. "Yeah," I said. "I'm coming." The HOA meeting was held in the community center, a sterile room that smelled of lemon cleaner and regret. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard now a podium, her voice dripping with authority as she outlined the proposed ban. The room was packed: neighbors I'd never spoken to, some nodding along, others shifting uncomfortably. I sat in the back, Marcus at my side, feeling like a defendant in a kangaroo court. When Karen opened the floor, I stood. All eyes turned to me, and I felt the weight of it: Hargrove's quiet pain, Dave's loyalty, the kids' wide-eyed wonder. "I know you all think I'm a troublemaker," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "And maybe I am. But that grill, it's not just a grill. It's a piece of me. It's freedom, creativity, a way to say I'm here. You don't have to like it, but you don't get to erase it." Karen rolled her eyes. "This isn't about freedom, Jack. It's about safety and standards." "Safety?" I shot back. "I've got permits. I've got inspections. And I toned it down for Mr. Hargrove, because he matters more than my ego. Can you say the same about your rules?" A murmur ran through the room. Karen's face reddened, but before she could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "He's right." Heads turned. It was Mrs. Carter, the cookie lady, all 5 feet of her standing with a fierceness I didn't expect. "I've lived here 20 years, she said, her voice trembling but firm. "And I'm tired of being told what my home can look like. Jack's grill is loud, sure, but it's his. And it's brought us together: barbecues, laughs, community. Isn't that what this place is supposed to be about?" The room erupted in whispers. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. Then Hargrove stood, his cane tapping the floor. "I don't care for the noise," he said, his voice steady. "But Jack listened. He changed it for me. That's more than the HOA's ever done. The tide was turning, and Karen knew it. She tried to rally, citing bylaws and precedents, but the room wasn't hers anymore. When the vote came, the ban failed narrowly, but it failed. I walked out feeling like I'd dodged a bullet, but the victory was bittersweet. Karen's eyes followed me, and I knew this wasn't over. The next morning, I found a notice taped to my door. Not from the HOA, but from the city. A noise complaint, filed anonymously, with a fine and a warning to remove excessive modifications from my grill. I knew who was behind it. Karen hadn't just lied about a Tricest gone nuclear. I could have fought it. I could have lawyered up, rallied the neighbors, turned Betsy into an even bigger spectacle. But as I stood in my garage, staring at her glowing LEDs, I felt something shift. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about what I was willing to lose. I called Marcus and told him the plan. "You're kidding," he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. "After all this?" "Yeah," I said. "It's time." The next Saturday, I invited the neighborhood one last time. The kids were there, drawing Betsy with their crayons. Dave brought his usual beer. Hargrove sat in a lawn chair, his roses in a vase beside him. Mrs. Carter brought cookies. Even Karen showed up, standing at the edge of the yard, her arms crossed. I didn't fire up Betsy. Instead, I stood in front of her, a sledgehammer in my hands. The crowd went quiet. "This grill," I said, "was my way of saying I'm here. But it's caused more pain than I meant. So, I'm letting her go." I swung the hammer. Metal crunched, LEDs shattered, and the crowd gasped. Karen's face was unreadable, part triumph, part shock. I kept swinging. Each hit a release of anger, pride, and something else I couldn't name. When I was done, Betsy was a heap of twisted steel. The kids were crying. Dave looked like he'd lost a friend. Hargrove just watched, his eyes soft. I turned to the crowd. "I'm not giving up," I said. "I'll build something new, something better. But this time, it's for all of us." That night, I sat alone in my garage, the wreckage of Betsy at my feet. I thought about Hargrove's war, Mrs. Carter's cookies, the kids' drawings. I thought about Karen, too, not as a villain, but as someone who wanted control in a world that felt chaotic. Maybe we weren't so different. The next day, I started sketching again. Not a grill this time, but a community fire pit, simple, warm, a place for everyone. I'd need permits, and Karen would probably fight me on it, but I was ready. Not for war, but for something bigger. What do you think? Was Jack right to destroy Betsy? Or should he have fought harder for his creation? Was Karen the villain, or just a product of the same system Jack was rebelling against? Share your thoughts. Where do you stand in this clash of freedom and community?